We're building what we consider a pretty large shop and office addition to our house. And this time we decided to bring you along earlier in the process, right? So you could see some of the decision making rather than just seeing everything dumped out on you during the actual construction phase. In earlier videos, we showed the proposed size and location of the building on our property, along with a lot of the details that we've come up with as we've come along so far. I think you would find it interesting to watch those videos so that you kind of understand where we're headed and the progress that we've made, because you may have questions here that we're not going to address in this particular video that we've already answered or already dealt with in prior episodes. Now today we've got our new solar equipment. Yeah, it's 5 pallets of stuff sitting back here, but it's actually a lot more than that because there's a lot of decision making that's had to go into choosing what we wanted in these 5 pallets, right? I found that kind of confusing, kind of difficult, or just I didn't know where to start with that. And now that I've been through that process, I think I can help a lot. In fact, just by working through a few simple approaches here, I'm going to be able to show you how to make similar decisions for your project. We also have to make some service entrance upgrades to our facility. We have to go from 200 amp to 400 amp. That gives us a chance to move the meter. We're going to talk a little bit about that through this episode. And the reason we have to talk about it now is because it's very relevant to what units we chose here, which devices we need to have in our solar system. We're not going to go through any of the cost analysis in this video. That's kind of a separate topic all on its own. I promise to take you through that. Really not prepared to do that yet, because even though we've got these 5 pallets of stuff, there's going to be a lot more stuff to buy, and I really can't estimate some of that cost at this point. But what we are going to go through is the sizing, why we chose these particular solar panels, why we chose these particular inverters, and the other units that we've chose. If you've been following along, you know that we've had significant health issues with Christy's father. He had a big fall. I'll give you a little more update on that at the end of the video, but for now I really want to focus on this solar equipment. Little different setting here. I'm in Christy's dad's house, visiting again. It's been good to catch up a little bit with Bobby. But let's dig into this sizing. The first issue that we have to decide is what our goal is. I suspect each of you stepping into it will have a particular goal. It could be to be off-grid so that you're not connected to any power grid from a utility at all. In my case, it is 0 power bill, okay? Or as close as I can get to that practically. I don't need to worry about exactly my peak usage of electricity in any one day or any one moment. I just want it over the course of the whole year to balance out. And I think that's going to make a big difference in how one goes about sizing their system. If you need to look at your very peak usage rather than just an overall average, I think you've got a totally different challenge to face. And we're not going to tackle that in this episode at all. The first thing we have to do is figure out how much power we need. The way the solar companies handle this all the time is they say, we just want you to send us your last, 13 bills. Believe it or not, my power company has it online here. I can look at my last 13 bills. 13 is kind of odd, right? But I guess it at least overlaps 1 year and should include 1 extra. Now, it's kind of fascinating because the high for me is 3959 kilowatt hours that you can see right here, but the average is 2368. Okay, so if I was going to try to cover all of my usage off-grid, I would have to be at least the 3959 for a month, but it's even going to be worse than that, right? I would have to find even higher usage during that month. There would be times of even higher usage. So that would be a totally different calculation. Like I say, we're not going to go into that. But what I'm going to use here is this 2368. That's my existing usage for the last 13 months, so the average of it. In my case, we're going to be adding a lot of square footage of heated space to our facility. So the existing power bills, while helpful, don't cover everything. I've had an HVAC guy out to do a bit of a load estimate on the new facility, and one of the figures he came up with was roughly $3,000 a year to heat and cool the facility. So what I've done is I've taken that $3,000, I've divided it by the 12.3 cents per kilowatt hour that I have to get to 24,370 kilowatt hours right here. I think that's going to be the bulk of our new usage. I've estimated another 300 kilowatt hours, which is mainly the lighting. And even that may not be accurate, because while I'm using the lighting in the new facility, I'm probably not using the lighting in the old facility. Same type of thinking. I've only got one air compressor. I've already got it now. I've got the lift. I'll not probably do any more welding than what I do now. So a lot of the activities that I have done are covered by the existing bill. So with this total, I come up to 56,386 kilowatt hours per year. I do have a trick up my sleeve that I think will lower that. So I'll probably not aim for all 56,000. I'll talk more about that later as we go along. Figuring out the order to ask all of these questions is the trick. What I've learned is the next step here is, once I know how much power that I'm gonna need, is where am I gonna locate my panels? At first I felt like that was getting the cart ahead of the horse, but given that the panel location determines how much power they can output, it's very important to understand that. So let's take a look at my options here. This is a rendering of what my backyard looks like. Anything in front, the roadway's up here at the top. Anything out here is off limits. There's no way I'm putting solar panels in my front yard, no matter how much it would save me. So that leaves me with something in the backyard. Now, from this line down here at the bottom, there really is no place back further than that I could go, unless it was at the far back side of my property, and that's just not acceptable. So I'm kind of left with this area right in here. I had considered putting the panels on pole mounts here, on tall pole mounts. I found them at mtsolar.com, and I could get them tall enough that I could drive my tractors and mowers under them, which was a big advantage to me. I don't like ground mount panels that are difficult to mow around. I don't like the look of them, and I just didn't want the difficulty of mowing around them. But once I saw how many panels I was going to need, yeah, that's right, I did kind of jump ahead, but once I saw that I needed a large number of panels, I just didn't think this area was going to be big enough. Another odd area that I looked at was the same kind of concept, to put a pole mount above this roof line right here on the old shop. Now understand, we are facing north, so the optimal panel location would be on a southern facing roof like this one, but this southern facing roof would be shaded by these trees here, and I wasn't going to take out all of these trees just for the solar panels. I was left with not very many good options, and what I finally decided was to put them here on the roof, and you can see that I've got them illustrated here. This may not be the exact location on the roof, but this is the general idea that I'm going with, and probably will be very close to the final location. This is facing east, this is facing west, and no, that is not optimal. It's far from optimal. These panels are only $88 a piece from Signature Solar, and by the way, there is a link in the description. I am working with Signature Solar on this. If you want to follow along, get exactly the same panels, exactly the same inverters, you can find those links. If not, no big deal. I just want to make that available to you so that you can understand. So these panels are relatively inexpensive. As long as I can get by somewhat inexpensively on the mounts, the lack of efficiency is more than offset to me by the aesthetics of not having the panels in the way of the rest of my property, you might say. So my estimated usage right now is 56,000 kilowatt hours per year. I'm actually going to shoot for 50,000 kilowatt hours of power from the solar, and that's because of that rabbit I'm going to pull out of the hat hopefully later. And I'm not going to talk to you about that now, but I am going to aim for 50,000 AC kilowatt hours. This is probably the biggest calculation. I'm actually not going to do the calculation myself. I'm using a calculator here that I found online, and I'm going to use it a little bit backwards from the way it was intended, because I have to translate from the AC kilowatt hours that I need to the DC wattage of the array that I'm going to be placing on my roof. And so the angle of the array, the steepness of the pitch, where my facility is located, in other words, I'm in Indiana, I'm not in Texas, so that makes a big difference. All that stuff is considered at this calculator at pvwatts.nrel.gov. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, I really don't know what my DC size is yet, right? I don't know my DC system size, so I'm just going to put 1 kilowatt in. My module types tariffs. Let's see what kind of modules I have. When we look at the info on this, the standards are 19% efficiency, the premiums are 21, and the thin films are 18. Well, mine are listed at 20% efficiency on their spec sheet, so I'm just going to go with standard. Now, what kind of an array do I have? I'm going to have a fixed roof mount. System losses. There's a whole bunch of different choices in system losses here. I left them all at their defaults because, quite frankly, I don't know. The tilt degree, I've got a 4 to 12 pitch, 4-1 pitch, and that is 18.4 degrees. So we'll change that to 18.4. And we will change the azimuth to 90 degrees. So that's east facing. Okay, so there's a whole bunch more advanced parameters here. One that might be of interest is that I say it's not a bifacial panel. My panels are actually bifacial, but they're going to be mounted so close to the roof that the bifacial should not contribute to the actual output of the panel. So let's see what the results are, assuming that we did a 1 DC kilowatt system, and that is 1162 kilowatt hours per year. 1 kilowatt DC produces 1162 AC kilowatts per year. And that should account for my location, it should account for the pitch of the roof, all taken care of without me having to do the calculations on my own. So if 1 DC kilowatt produces 1162 AC kilowatt hours in a year, then we can just use a simple ratio to say, well, what would it take to get 50,000 AC kilowatt hours? I'll just divide by that 1162, and I come up with a DC kilowatt array size of 43 kilowatts. So let's double check our numbers there. We'll put in 43 kilowatts here, okay? Make sure all of our numbers are still the same, and we come out with 49,998 kilowatt hours of AC energy per year. So our 43 kilowatts is what we're gonna go for the DC array size. The next step is to figure out which inverter I'm going to use and how many inverters I'm going to need. That's to make that DC to AC conversion. I have a bias already towards the EG4 FlexBoss 21 from Signature Solar, and the main reason for that is because it was the least expensive that I could find online, and it's very, very new, and it's well suited for my application because the way it separates some of the functionality, but yet has all the features that I need, especially when tied with the Grid Boss that we'll get to a little bit later. So I want to show you this solar panel string sizer calculator from EG4, and I'm going to choose the FlexBoss 21 hybrid inverter, and I've got a whole bunch of solar panels here to select from. This is what makes this calculator easy. One of my friends, Country View Acres or Country View Solar, actually, he goes through a lot of this particular part of the calculation in much more detail, and he does this by hand. He looks at the spec sheet, he calculates his minimum temperatures and everything, does it all by hand. This calculator will do it for us. Maybe I should take just a break here. I'm gonna have to kind of step into this gently to figure out which solar panels I want to use, but I'm gonna be a bargain hunter here, right? So I'm gonna go to the Signature Solar page and I'm gonna figure out which ones they have available via pallets, and then I'm gonna sort by price ascending here. There's several different choices. I can tell you that this one wasn't here when I made my order, or I would have looked at it. In fact, we will look at it in just a second, but it still wouldn't beat the one I have. So I'll just cut to the chase here and select the panel that I actually chose for my system. This is the Hyperion 400 watt bifacial. So there we go, 400 watt bifacial. The B, I think, is the bifacial aspect. We have a few more things to set up here on this screen. I'm going to be roof mounted parallel to roof, less than 6 inches to the roof. I'm gonna do the temperatures in Fahrenheit, and -21 is the coldest it's gonna get here. Let's just say that. And I'm gonna say it can get to 105 for the high temperature. Believe it or not, it's the low temperature that's critical. The panels do much better in low temperatures than they do in high temperatures. So
When we're trying to maximize the amount of energy that we get to the inverter without blowing it up. And the voltage on these panels is highest at low temperatures. Add the bifacial gain. I'm getting 0 bifacial gain. So I'll just put in 0 for that, and I'm going to configure the array. This tells me that I can use 57 panels, and it tells me how I can lay those panels out. Let's look a little bit more detail here. The maximum allowed wattage for these first two inputs is 9360 and we're at 8800. So we have a little bit of room to spare there. We're putting 465 volts at the coldest temperature. So we've got a little bit of room to spare there. Overall, this looks pretty good, but I'm not going to quite go with 57 panels because I wanted to get the pallet price. And these are shipped in pallets of 36 panels. So I ordered 3 pallets of them. I'm going to change this to 10, 11, that's 55. So then I'll go to 12 here. So now we have what I'm going to have 54. One of my parallel strings here will have only 10 panels in each string and the other one will have 11. Total wattage then of output that I'll get is 21.6. If we double that number, that's 43,200. With this approach and 2 of these inverters, I can get my 43,000 DC watts. So let's back up a little bit and try one of these other panels, and you'll see that there is some art to selecting these. So let's just choose this least expensive one. It's a 355 watt REC Twin Peak. Right there. With this configuration of 11 panels on each string, we are at 598.8 volts of input to the FlexBoss inverter. My understanding is that if we go over 600 volts, we will very likely blow up the inverter. So this is a hard maximum. I've configured it at minus 21 degrees. If we would happen to get to minus 22 degrees, we would be, minus 23 degrees and we would blow things up, right? It just will say, that doesn't work. I'm going to go back to my minus 21 here. What is key to see here is that this is a 355 watt panel, and yet our total wattage that we're able to get is 19,525. And that's because we're at this voltage limit with this particular panel. Okay. At first you might think, well, then I just need to make sure that I get panels with higher wattage. Well, that's true up to a point. So let's find a panel here with 555 watts. This is a Philadelphia Solar 555 watt panel. And because of voltage limitations, we're not getting near the 600 volts here, but another panel on this string would get us there. The total wattage we're able to get into our system is only 16,000. So by choosing a slightly smaller wattage panel, let's see how 550 works. Nope, 545. There, look, see 545 stepped it up significantly. I'll show you that again. 545 to 550, watch it go from 22.3 to 15.9. So adding another 5 watts to the panel meant we could use less panels in our string. So it's very important to optimize which panel you're choosing to the way you've got your strings laid out and your max and min temperature. If you're further south and you're never going to see minus 21, maybe 0 is your temperature, you might be able to use a higher wattage panel than what I can in Indiana. This particular measurement doesn't have anything to do with the angle or the orientation of the panel, because in theory, one day a year you might be able to get that full voltage and that full wattage out of that panel and destroy your system. So this is the max, and this is where we'll see the inefficiency in my system because my panels are not oriented properly. I probably could get away with adding a few extra panels because I probably won't see that perfect amount of sun when it's minus 21 degrees. But I'm not willing to take that chance. So with 54 panels on each side of my roof, I'm able to have an array of 21,600 watts for each inverter. Now, I probably won't ever see that 21,600 watts. In fact, the inverter itself is limited to 21,000. But that's the amount of wattage that I will place on the roof, and then it will be either limited by the angle of the sun or limited by the inverter itself. You can supply too much amperage to these inverters without hurting them. There is an upper limit on that, but we're well within that. But you cannot supply more voltage than what is specified, more than the 600 volts. So that's what we're going to go with. 108 panels, 54 on each side, 2 of these FlexBoss 21 hybrid inverters, but we're not quite done yet. Most systems would be simple enough that we would be finished, just button it up here, but I've got more complexity than that simply because of the size of my system. Our current 200 amp meter is located back here with the main power panel being inside. This is the transformer provided by the utility, and the wire to the meter runs underground over here like this to the meter. We're proposing that we move the meter. As a part of our meter upgrade, we have to go to 400 amp, but we're proposing that we move the meter over here, and we would put a meter right along here. We would run the underground wire right over here. We don't have to pay for that since it's a meter upgrade. The utility will pay for the wire there. I think it's going to cost us $700 total plus any electrician's fee, which there will be some, to actually get this meter mounted here. So this part of the diagram here indicates what it's going to look like right outside the new shop. Here's the new 400 amp meter. There will be a 200 amp disconnect right here, another 200 amp disconnect to the other main panel. So we won't have a single 400 amp main panel. We'll have two separate 200 amp panels. Now I say it's going to the panel, but it's actually going to go to this grid boss, which is this grid interconnect device, and each one of those is rated at 200 amps. So the power path from the utility will be from the meter through this disconnect, through the grid boss to the shop service panel. And flex boss solar power will come into this grid boss as well. The same type of thing happens on the other side. 200 amp disconnect, very short distance here. And the grid boss, this is still located in the utility room of the shop, but we'll have a grid boss for the house panel, and we will run a cable through the attic of the house, probably 2-aught aluminum cable all the way to the house, just because I can't afford the copper to do that. Now I have a little bit of a challenge because the grid boss insists on using only copper to connect. So I'm going to have to figure out how to do a transition from aluminum to copper here somewhere, but that's a detail I'm willing to work through. So back to this picture here, the second floor room here, we will run that aluminum cable all the way back to this garage to power the existing main panel there. I'm still working on mounting options. Right now it looks like mounts for the roof may be about as much cost as the panels themselves. And so I'm doing everything I can to reduce the cost of the mounts. If you have any ideas, let us know on that. We have a G-rib roof panel that we're going to be using. So it is steel roofing. We expect to have to penetrate the roof for the panel mounts themselves. I'm assuming we'll have rails on top of those roof mounts. Don't have that entirely worked out yet, but we are making some progress in that direction. And for that reason, as well as others, again, we just cannot provide you a cost estimate at this point. We know that it's close enough that we can go forward with it, but I want to give you a better cost-benefit analysis, and so we're just going to put that off for a little while, not even tackle that in this particular episode. Christy, I've been sitting here talking to these folks about solar. Just like our little world is all orderly and normal, just like it's always been, but...
Yeah, not so much.
Not so much, that's right. We have been in a lot of disarray since the 17th of December, and it's now 27th of January as we record this.
Wow.
You've been here the whole time.
I have been, yep, with
in
Dad.
North Carolina with your dad. He had a severe accident on the 17th of December. Broke his neck, broke his back.
Sternum, his ribs, had a pulmonary embolism.
Yeah, that I don't even know if that was a part of it.
I don't know, but they found it.
And so he's through the trauma phase at this point. I mean, I would say that a lot of the trauma is healed. In other words, all the bad bruising and
yes, that's a lot better.
The most acute pain, and he's a lot more nimble than he was the last time I saw him.
He is. We've been home for a couple of weeks. Been taking care of him here, and I think that's helped. Anybody wants to get home, get out of the hospital, and he's been doing pretty good. He's still got a long way to go, but being able to see friends and other family members and kind of have a normal life, if you can.
It's not really normal. I mean, there's no way he
Right.
could live by himself.
No.
Christy's here, a 24/7 nurse, really. I mean, you have to
Yep.
to spend a lot of time with him, just full time. There's no other choice on that. So our lives are going to be continue to be.
Right, yeah. It's going to be a while. He's getting a lot of physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. So
probably the biggest challenge we've had, you'd say, well, gee, with all the health issues, that's the biggest challenge. Well, really, it's been the medical system. We've really struggled. You have really struggled with the medical system. I don't want to go into any more detail other than to say that we don't have the medical system that we had 20 years ago.
It seems broken.
It really is broken, and it's too bad. That's been more stressful for you and more hours of struggle and stress with the medical system than actually with your dad as a
You
patient.
have to be your own advocate, and I've had to do a lot of research and Googling things and trying to figure out the way it works, and sometimes complaining because people aren't actually doing the way it's supposed to work.
And we don't want to be that way because
No.
you want to allow the professionals to be professionals. I know
Absolutely.
nothing about medicine, and really
Nope.
you don't either. And so it's really difficult to know when to step up. And it's a shame that it has to be that way, but really we're in that situation. You've got to advocate for yourself in these scenarios. And
Yes, yeah. And not give up. Just keep going, keep puttering, keep making phone calls, keep asking questions until you get the right information for your loved one.
Now, we've got several projects coming up here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Over the next week or 10 days. The weather's a lot nicer here than it is in Indiana.
It's going to be 70 here.
So that'll be great. And I think we might even be able to get your dad out, maybe at least in his little Rover or Ranger, and be able to get out a little bit with him.
Yeah.
And we can play with some of his equipment. He's got a John Deere 110 backhoe. I'm excited about that. Now, I'm still planning to go to the farm show.
I am not.
Yeah,
so I will miss everyone this year.
February 11th through the 15th in Louisville, National Farm Machinery Show. I will be there. We usually meet up at the Deere booth at 11 a.m. If I have any other meetups, I'll try to put them here in the description of this video, as well as on Facebook. I don't really know what other meetups we might have.
Ken's going to be with you, though.
Ken from Bolt-On Hooks. R2 from R2 Manufacturing. Ryan and Rob will be there.
And Dave.
Dave and his wife are going to be there, so you'll get to meet our helper Dave. He'll be there on Thursday and Friday.
They're me this year.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I'll miss everybody.
Yeah. But I'm excited to be there, and hopefully we can go forward with our building project. As you've seen here, we're trying to go forward.
Yep.
We don't see much other choice.
Maybe Dad will be up for going out to Indiana and being a part of it.
Helping us build.
Yeah. Yep. I hope so.
If you got any questions about the solar or about Christy's dad, let us know in the comments. We'll have some more. The next solar video will be about the return on investment. But I don't expect that to come real soon because we've got more money to spend.
What?
So we got to figure out how much it's going to cost us total before we can figure out how long it'll take to pay it off. But we will have an episode dedicated to HVAC because there's some big choices to be made there. I talked about that rabbit in the hat.
The Finance Committee has been distracted, and I need to get on the ball.
The Finance Committee has been absent at the last 2 or 3 Finance Committee meetings.
So everything just passed.
Yep.
With no objections. Ugh.
I better get off here before I get hit. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time on
Tractor Time with Tim.
From the rising of the sun to the place where it sets, the name of the Lord is to be praised.